I mean, I once had an audition that was going on for a really long time for a very big movie, which I won't mention, and was the director, and I was working just with him for like 20 minutes, which is a very long time to do these scenes. And at the end, he said, you know, Tom, I've been trying to make this work. And he said, but we've hired the woman to play your wife, and she's about 15 years older than you.
And it won't work.
And
it's going to throw the whole
It just won't work. And so...
if they hadn't hired her first, you would have been in.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would have had a much better shot at it.
Right.
You know, and obviously I was, you know, he was still staying there 20 minutes later, you know, working on the scene. But that's the nature of the business. That's the nature of the business. And sometimes you go in and you're exactly what they want, you know. But you also, if you look exactly what they have as their concept, you also have to deliver the goods and give a good audition.
So, do you have to have a great memory to be a good actor?
I used to have a great memory. I think you do. But I think it's more observation skills. I think it's empathy. I think it's listening is so important. Good actors are good listeners. And listening and hearing, which for me is a sort of a personal subject because I'm hard of hearing, and I actually was found that people who would compliment me on some performances were actually complimenting me because they would say, well, you look like you're listening so intently.
Because you had to.
Because I had to. Before I got my hearing aids, I was like, oh my God, I had to pay attention.
So maybe that's been an advantage.
It has been an advantage. I think it has been an advantage.
Because you turn it, because you, like you said, because you have to listen.
You really have to listen, and that really is an essential part of good acting. You know, good acting is good reacting. You have to listen and hear what the person has said, and then react to that. I mean, even though you both have read the script, you know, and you know what you're supposed to say next, you have to make it. It has to come from a place in you that is organic and is just reacting to.
Does it have to be exactly what they wrote as they wrote the script?
Sometimes
or does that depend on the director?
That depends on the director, and it depends on the medium. In television, often you stick closer to the script because the producer is often the writer. And so some of them are very particular about their words.
They get offended that you change the word. Okay.
And in film, the director is the one who you have to please. And
not the writers.
The writer is a little more secondary.
Oh, okay.
And so you can work it. Though sometimes they can be so badly written that you just have to really, I mean, on some really big television shows, that you have to adjust a little bit, just to make it sound like normal people would say this. But and on Brotherhood, which was television, and the producers were the writers, we really did change things up on the set. But usually the writer was there, and you would be talking with him about trying to make this work better. And it was also for me, well, I guess it was my first time that I had a part that I did over and over again. So it was a character that was going on through a process of change in his life and situation and circumstances. And so in that, I had a lot more say about who the character was and who the character became and where he came from, and actually talk the director into a lot of that stuff before we even started, back over lunch in Los Angeles, you know, and I told him who I thought the guy was and came up with a bunch of
so how does that start? So, okay, let's say you did the interview for Brotherhood, they said, okay. So now you have a process, you're interviewing these people prior to the shoot. So now you're trying to get acclimated to understand the role and everything?
Well, what happens typically in that situation, as it did in Brotherhood, you would have your audition, your interview, and you'd be cast in the pilot episode, which would be the very first episode.
So that was the one they showed last night? Was the pilot?
No, that's the second season.
Oh, okay.
In the first season, you show a pilot, and I've done several pilots in Los Angeles, and not all of them get picked up. And so you do the pilot, and then it's sort of for the producers, it's a spec project, really, and it gets picked up. And then the network, Showtime, orders 10 more. So we're going to pick up the season and do that. So then they get the actors back who had played those original characters
So their contract says if this pilot gets picked up, you got to come back.
You got to come back.
Or you're going to screw us up, and you're going to be
so
you'll be on the blacklist.
That's right. So you sign a contract, for that giving them the option that they have to say yes, and then everything else in the contract comes into play. But once the pilot was picked up, before we went into the season, my character originally, before we even shot the pilot, wasn't probably supposed to live beyond the first episode. But as we were doing the first episode...
You're a good salesman, Tom. You convinced them.
As we were doing the first episode, the character...
They liked you.
They did.
And they liked the character.
And they liked the character, and they liked what I was doing
with
him.
it. Okay.
And the director and I, Philip Noyes, sort of got into a really good mind meld or something about who he was, and he got a little bit bigger as the pilot went on. So between the pilot and shooting the second episode then of the first season, I was in Los Angeles and met with the writer and creator, Blake Masters, and we had a lot of discussions about who this guy was.
You said, make sure he's in most of the episodes.
Well, yeah, and so I can't tell you about this. but about who he was is that he was half Italian and half Irish, and in the Irish mob that didn't play well, and they felt outside.
As outcasts.
And then he had a wife of 30 years and a mistress of 25, and several things that built this character, and yet he never felt he was being unfaithful to either of them.
He wasn't, in his mind.
He wasn't, in his mind he wasn't. So it was a very interesting project, but nice for an actor to have input.
Sure.
To really develop who the character was.
Well, Tom, we're coming to the end of this segment, so if you hold on. Now, would you be happy to stay for the movie review section of our show?
Yes.
Boy, the right answer. Folks, listen, Eileen Meyer has been biting her tongue in the audience, waiting to come on the show. So I know she's going to have a lot of questions for Tom, and she's going to talk about some of the upcoming movies, and maybe with Tom's background, this will fit in really well. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with the movie review section of